Most people have experienced a strange coincidence that felt impossible to ignore. You think about someone you have not spoken to in years, and moments later, they call. You wear a particular shirt before an important event, and everything seems to go your way. You avoid walking under a ladder, knock on wood, or repeat a lucky routine before an exam or a big game. It feels like these small actions somehow influence what happens next. But the real answer is far stranger. Your brain is not naturally designed to understand randomness. Instead, it evolved to detect patterns because your ancestors survived by finding connections in a dangerous world, even when some of those connections did not actually exist. Imagine walking through a dense forest tens of thousands of years ago. Every sound mattered. Every shadow could hide danger. If rustling leaves usually meant a predator was nearby, recognizing that pattern could save your life. Missing a real pattern carried enormous consequences. Seeing a false pattern, on the other hand, usually cost very little. From an evolutionary perspective, it was far safer for your brain to assume that two events were connected than to ignore a genuine warning. Could this ancient survival strategy still influence how you interpret everyday events today? Psychologists call this tendency pattern recognition, but in simple terms, it means your brain constantly searches for relationships between events. It is so effective that it often finds meaning even where none exists. Clouds become familiar faces. Random numbers seem strangely significant. Coincidences begin to feel like hidden messages. What once helped your ancestors detect predators now encourages you to believe that unrelated events must somehow be connected. This tendency became much clearer through the work of psychologist B.F. Skinner. During a famous experiment, hungry pigeons received food at completely random times. The birds had no control over when food appeared, yet many pigeons began repeating whatever movement they happened to be making just before the food arrived. One spun in circles, another stretched its neck repeatedly, another flapped its wings in a particular direction. The pigeons behaved as though their actions caused the reward, even though the timing was entirely random. In many ways, your brain can fall into remarkably similar habits. Think about how easily routines become lucky rituals. An athlete wears the same socks after winning an important game. A student insists on using the same pencil before every examination. An investor believes checking the market at exactly the same time each morning somehow improves performance. After one successful outcome, your brain eagerly links the behavior with the result. The connection feels convincing because the emotional memory becomes stronger than the actual evidence. Another remarkable discovery came from psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Their research revealed that your brain often relies on quick mental shortcuts instead of carefully evaluating probabilities. These shortcuts help you make rapid decisions, but they also encourage false conclusions. If two memorable events happen close together, your brain naturally assumes one caused the other. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to accept that some events are simply random? This shortcut also explains why gambling feels so persuasive. A slot machine pays out shortly after someone presses a particular button with a certain rhythm. Although every spin is independent, the player's brain begins searching for a secret formula. Patterns appear where only chance exists. The feeling becomes so convincing that people may continue repeating rituals despite overwhelming evidence that they have no effect. Your ancestors rarely encountered true randomness. Most events in nature followed understandable causes. Animal tracks usually led to animals. Dark clouds often brought rain. Rotten food frequently caused illness. The environment rewarded anyone who quickly connected causes and consequences. Because of that history, your brain evolved to expect that every outcome has an explanation waiting to be discovered. Modern life presents a completely different challenge. Stock markets fluctuate unpredictably. Viral internet posts appear without obvious reasons. Algorithms recommend videos using invisible calculations. Random events happen every day inside enormously complex systems. Yet your brain continues using survival software developed for a much simpler world. Instead of accepting uncertainty, it desperately searches for patterns that make the world feel more predictable. Researchers have even identified a phenomenon known as apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. In plain English, this means your brain would rather invent an explanation than accept that no explanation currently exists. That preference makes uncertainty feel uncomfortable. A random coincidence can become a supernatural sign. A sequence of numbers can seem destined. ordinary events become part of an imagined story, because stories reduce anxiety far more effectively than randomness. Neuroscientists have also discovered that dopamine plays an important role in this process. Dopamine is often called the anticipation chemical because it helps your brain notice potential rewards and learn from surprising outcomes. When unexpected events occur, dopamine encourages your brain to pay close attention and remember the surrounding circumstances. This learning system usually helps you adapt to changing environments. However, it can also strengthen false associations if coincidence happens repeatedly enough. Social life amplifies this tendency throughout human history. Imagine hearing several members of your tribe describe the same strange event. Even if the stories were inaccurate, believing them could strengthen group cooperation and shared traditions. Rituals formed communities. Shared beliefs created trust. Sometimes, believing the same pattern as everyone else became more valuable than questioning whether the pattern was actually true. This helps explain why lucky charms, traditions, and superstitions appear in nearly every culture throughout history. Different societies created different rituals, yet the underlying psychological mechanism remained remarkably similar. Your brain naturally searches for certainty, especially when facing unpredictable situations involving risk, competition, illness, or survival. Even science depends on pattern recognition, but with one crucial difference. Scientists constantly test whether an observed pattern survives repeated experiments. If evidence disappears, the pattern is rejected. Your brain, by contrast, often accepts the very first explanation that feels emotionally satisfying. That difference separates careful investigation from instinctive intuition. The next time a coincidence feels almost magical, pause for a moment. Ask yourself whether your brain is discovering a genuine relationship or simply completing a story because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. That single question can transform the way you interpret everyday experiences. The strange truth is that luck often feels real, not because mysterious forces control your life, but because your brain evolved to connect events faster than it evaluates evidence. The same survival system that once protected your ancestors from hidden predators still guides your attention today. It constantly searches for order in chaos, meaning in coincidence, and certainty in uncertainty. Every time you notice a lucky number, repeat a familiar ritual, or feel convinced that two unrelated events must be connected, you are witnessing an ancient evolutionary adaptation quietly shaping how you understand the modern world.